name is Silvia Castelvi. I am senior consultant on IDSA, and I am a member of this project. I am participating in this project, Omega-X, and I was also member of OpenDI project, leading Task Force 1 about data spaces, and working on the design principle position paper, and then on building blocks identification from different projects. And now I am also involved in the new project Data Space Support Center that is going to provide support to the different data spaces deployment, starting at this moment with the CSA in different sectors that are defining how to implement data spaces in a common way. For one point, that is clarifying what are data spaces and what is different from what is new or different on data spaces, because it's this common understanding, I think, that it's needed. So let me take some minutes to explain you, okay, these numbers you don't need to know, but the increase of the data is every time more important, but what is really important is the data has a value. So we need to treat data as an asset. This is a key message from international data space. So if we are going to create the data economy where the companies will be evaluated by the value of the data, we need to keep control and trade the data as it was money or has a value as an asset. And this is the value proposition that we propose in IDSA, how to make it possible. And what we realize from data platforms is that sometimes they are vendor locking. So we are promoting a new architecture that is vendor independent and allows at the same time to connect different platforms, because in data platforms, who has the owner of the data platform has the more data and has more power. So then the companies compete for aggregating data instead of competing for providing value-added services. And with this new data sharing framework, we want to decrease the cost of creating platforms and then allowing new entrants to adopt and use this new architecture. What we are seeing is an evolution of the data ecosystem. You can say, okay, a data platform is a data ecosystem. Yes, but it's close. Okay, in research project, for example, they don't need the data control because they are working one-to-one. So it's just between two partners that they agree and share some data, but we are not talking about that. Then the second phase, we have more partners that are sharing. So we create a close community or data sharing ecosystem. But this is also close and between very few. What we are building here in energy data space domain is an open and dynamic data ecosystem where you can enter into a data ecosystem, and this data ecosystem could be interoperable with other data ecosystem. For example, in mobility, for electrical vehicle charging or with manufacturing, and each domain has their own interoperability technologies, rules. So here we have a challenge how to make it interoperable, but at the same time connected. Let me insist a little bit on the concept of data sovereignty. So when the companies, and you realize that in energy sector it's happening because you explained it as that some companies doesn't want to share the data because they are the owners of the data and they have concern regarding sharing data. So here we need to find the balance between data ownership and data sovereignty, but at the same time open it to deploy new service to make it interoperable and facilitate the creation of the new data sharing economy data economy. And this is what we call data spaces, and it was presented for the European Commission. So we call the data spaces as a sum of endpoints where they are able to share data in a under a federate architecture. So then in this federate architecture, it is not needed a physical integration. We can also leave the data where it has been produced, and then the service goes to the data and execute the algorithm and the process, and then just share the results of the service. Also, we propose with this federated data architecture to make it interoperable, not creating silos and no vendor dependence, and also facilitating the control over the data and the traceability, what happens with the data, and what is important, the trust on the participants. And we provide tools and solutions. What we provide in IDSA, we provide interoperability. We have defined a standard for data sharing based on semantic interoperability. We have the IDS information model based on RDF, and we are working with W3C to make a common standard for semantic interoperability. Another pillar is the trust. So here it is important that we trust with other partners, and we have developed and implemented a certification process for certification in the organizations participating on the environment, on the ecosystem, but also for certificating the components, the IDS connectors. And next month, at the beginning of next year, we will have our first IDS or IDS compliance data space connector certified. And then what is important is the governance for the data in order to have the control of the usage of the data and enforce the application of the usage policies that between two parties has been agreed. So if you agree with one party with a price regarding this data asset, then this price should be paid, but also the purpose of the use of this data, the time of use, and the stakeholders that can access to this data. And these policies are enforced on the data space connector, technically. Okay, all the achievements that we got or we achieved in these 6 years working on the creation of these secure data spaces is thank you our members. At this moment, we are more than 140 members and more than 400 people contributing. All the developments has been done with our members. And which are these assets that we contribute on data spaces? Our assets are public available, so it's all open source. The only thing that is private just for members is the production of the assets or the results of IDSA. And we call this the magic triangle because these assets are composed of 4 principles. One is the reference architecture, the IDS reference architecture, that is a blueprint for deploying and implementing data spaces with detailed specifications. And if you access, we have the current version 4.0 on GitHub, and it's public available, and you can follow the layers that are specified. Then we have the certification schema that I introduced before in order to assure that the components that are being used under IDSA follow the IDSA standard and cybersecurity specifications defined on this standard. And then we have in GitHub, we have a portfolio of open source building components developed by our members and can be accessed to be implemented. One of them is the testbed, and the testbed allows you to test your components for the certification process, but also the testbed is a minimum viable data space that you can use to implement an IDS compliance data space. And then finally, the fourth asset is the IDS rulebook that provides you a governance on how to run a data space, and more concretely on real IDS data spaces. I am not going into detail because it's explaining more in details our assets that I summarize quickly. And here you can see how IDSA is working. So we work on the creation of the IDSA standard in blue. You can see our IDSA course that I have referred before. But also we are working on the adoption of this standard and the developments, and we have implementation partners on IDSA. These are research centers or companies that has developed solutions, and you can ask assessment for them or consultancy. And we have also a startup and that has a software as a service IDSA components offered. And also one important comment is that we have different working groups developing the IDS reference architecture, developing the rule book, and now we have a legal group. And in order to develop the core assets of IDSA, you need to become member. If you just want to use it, it's not needed to become member. This is open source and you can use it. And then we have an IDSA ecosystem composed by research projects where we participate in order to facilitate the adoption of IDSA and also data spaces, but we have liaisons with other entities. We will see some of them then later, for example, the Data Spaces Business Alliance, and we are working also on standardization activities. So I think that at this moment, what is clear is for deploying a data space, we propose to securize the endpoints to enter to this data space to create a trust framework. And the idea is the data space connector, you can see here the image, is this asset or this secure component that allows you to enter and share data in a secure way. So for this purpose, when we share data, we are talking about the data provider and the data user. And here you can see, and you can find this picture on IDSA website, and you can see how it works, because we have this agreement between the data producer and the data consumer in order that you just expose in a broker the metadata with information related to the data set, but the data set is directly exchanged between the producer and the owner. So we keep the control of the data and we don't share the data with third parties. We can, okay, but then when we share data, we attach or we include the usage policies for this data. And what is important also regarding the IDS connector proposed specification is it is composed of Dockers, and you can deploy apps and you can run on the edge, on the IDS connector, the services, and then you just exchange the results. For this purpose, we have the App Store where you can publish the service, and then the consumer just download the service and execute the algorithm on the edge. So this is an architecture that is taking more power also in IoT environment, the edge computing. And this is just for keeping the control, as I commented before, on data and monetizing the data and attaching data policies. And then we have components that are essential to guarantee this secure framework. And these components are the identity provider. There is not I can provide you a more detailed description of this identity provider. Nowadays, despite the architecture is federated, the identity provider defined in IDSA is based on a central component. So it's the dApps that assure when you are sharing the data to keep the control of the authentication parties that are sharing the data. I am going to speed a little bit. So let me explain you that IDSA is founding member of Gaia-X. In fact, one of the main participants on the definition of the Gaia-X architecture is Fraunhofer, Boris Otto. So here you can see that IDSA and Gaia-X are a combined architecture, and we will see later how it complement one each other. And the state of the art regarding the data space connector is that Gaia-X and IDSA under the project Catena-X are developing the Eclipse data space connector that will be IDSA and Gaia-X compliant. I am not going to enter on the detail of the architecture, and I suppose it's known for all of you. And also OpenDI is proposing this stacked architecture conceptual, as Javier explained it before, that has on the core the building blocks as a common infrastructure for data sharing. And then deploying these building blocks on different domains requires an architecture. Architecture based on Gaia-X or IDSA could provide this secure framework in order on the top developing the data ecosystem where you deploy the services and create value for all participants and consume the services. Okay, but the trust and data interoperability is provided by the concrete building blocks that could be common in different data spaces. So this is the proposal that we have created, the value proposition for creating data spaces that has been followed by mobility data space and Catena-X, from the functional blueprint to business ecosystem to create these interconnected and components inside the different different data spaces. And here we have a radar where you can see all the data spaces based on IDSAs available and the different level of maturity. Of course, we have some just ideas or concept on the far side from the center, but then when we have defined pilots and we have implemented pilot in a test center, we have tested it, we are going into the center, and then we have on live there are already available operational and commercial solutions based on IDSA. So this is work in progress, and you can find some of them on energy sector. And just 2 minutes to explain this convergence between the 4 core organizations: Big Data Value Association, Gaia-X, FIWARE, and International Data Space under Data Space Business Alliance, but also they are part of the Data Space Support Center project, CSA, and providing guidelines how to implement data spaces. And this is the value proposition from the Data Space Support Center. It's not time now to explain it, but there is one task in order to identify data spaces building blocks and data spaces blueprint here. And based on the current available projects, some of them, a lot of them, and you are part of them in Platoon, BD for Energy, will contribute to define this data spaces blueprint building blocks is it will be an iterative process for the next 4 years. So the energy data spaces, despite you are not under the Digital Euro program, who is financing this CSA, we will take in consideration your feedback in order to redefine this blueprint and share with the rest of participants. And my last slide is from DSBA. DSBA, maybe this work in progress is because they are working on it, but I think that the paper, the paper is already available on this architecture convergence. Is an exercise that is needed between the 4 organizations because we need to create a common way, not going from one to another one. And here you can see from the 4 organizations how they can contribute to the data spaces. And in the case of IDSA, we contribute with the data connector, with vocabularies to apply the semantic interoperability. And thank you to Technalia, for example, and some projects. We have a collection of vocabularies, how to implement, to define how to implement usage policies in energy sector that can be reused with the purpose of define data usage control. And this is the value proposition that just IDSA is providing to data spaces. And here you can see, for example, FIWARE, as I explained Javier before, they are more focused on this, on the providing the product catalog, marketplace, product specification, and the smart data models. And also Gaia-X Trust Framework is providing a self-descriptive and a decentralized identity, and also a federated service catalog for critical data space service to be deployed. And that's all from my side. So time maybe for questions or comments.